Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session on HEXA policy orchestration and identity query language, IDQL. My name is Jerry Gable. I'm the head of standards at Strata Identity. At Strata, we provide a solution that enables identity orchestration. Given that most organizations and large enterprises have more than one cloud platform deployed, more than one identity provider, and maybe several MFA or password solutions, plus identity data scattered across the environment, identity orchestration facilitates or orchestrates that a session startup and authentication and initial access to applications. But what about after that step? What about access policies? That's the next era or the next layer to focus on. And so we've started this journey to standardize access policy across the cloud stacks, as well as across the cloud platforms, as well as across the stack. So we're going to talk about this journey and some of the context or reasons behind starting this standardization project. And then I'll actually share you some demonstrations. I have 3 different demos that shows how IDQL and HEXA can be used in various scenarios. And then we'll wrap up with some summary thoughts at the end. So when we talk about access policies across the cloud environment, again, with large organizations, we're typically dealing with 2 or more cloud platforms. And of course, they each have their own proprietary way to define and manage access policies. In addition to that, we have this complexity even up and down the typical stack. That is from the identity and application to the infrastructure to the data, all the way to the network layers. We have this similar problem of complexity and policy fragmentation because, again, all of these different technologies use different formats to express and manage access. So IDQL is an answer to that, to harmonize or standardize a common way to define access policy. And you'll see in the demos coming up how HEXA now enables us to manage this access policy. So IDQL and HEXA are a response to this complexity and to this fragmentation across the typical enterprise environment. And we realized this when we went out and talked to customers. And here are some of my favorite quotes of people that we've talked to over the last couple of years. One is, we want to have a common policy set that is independent of the target systems, independent of those separate cloud platforms that I was just talking about. Another comment here, we need a single format for authoring access policies that can be distributed to all the runtime decision and enforcement systems. So this is a slightly different perspective. So that organization, they want to have a single pane of glass to define access policies and then use some mechanism now to convert it to the runtime environments so that that decision and enforcement action can take place. And then finally, the last comment here, there isn't a common way to express policy across all the systems we manage, and that is a huge gap that should be addressed. Well, and that's what the IDQL and HEXA working group set out to do now more than 2 years ago. And this shows you a few of the highlights of our timeline, how we started, working on the specification itself, defining IDQL, bringing together a diverse group of practitioners, both from enterprises as well as from the software side of the house, and ultimately built out a working HEXA orchestration open source system. We brought this project to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation early last year, submitted it as a sandbox project, and we were accepted in the middle of the summer last year. So it's been quite a journey so far, but we're just getting started. So let's talk about a couple of different components. First, IDQL itself, Identity Query Language. What is this? Well, this is a standard way to define or author an access policy. And you can see here of the colored boxes, it's a 5-tuple model. That is subject, action, object or resource within a set of scopes or within a set of conditions. So it's meant to be a declarative model that's easy to read and understand what's happening within the policy. Great. Anyone can define a policy specification and write out that spec and declare it. Great, but how can we use it? So this is where we built the HEXA open source policy orchestration project to actually bring this new standard IDQL to life. And during our early work on HEXA, we've come up with 3 main functions. That is, I can connect to a target environment that I have an integration for and do policy discovery. That is, connect to that environment, see what applications and resources are defined and what policies are associated with them. I can pull that back into the HEXA system and translate that to IDQL. So now if I've connected to multiple environments, I can convert all of them to the IDQL format. Now I have a common way to manage those policies, make changes, and orchestrate changes back out to those target systems and retranslate to the native or bespoke format of those target systems. So that's the relationship of IDQL, the specification for declarative policy language, and then HEXA, which is the open source that's a reference implementation of how you would use this in a running environment. And a little bit more detail here of how HEXA is put together. So the main functions here are exposed via an API. And what you'll see in one of my demos is a HEXA admin UI that will take IDQL in JSON format and call the main functions. And then for each target system that we have support, there will be these 3 functions: discover, get policy, and set policy. So you'll see that in action. And then furthermore, within each provider package, that's how we bundle up or how we construct the connections, the integrations to the target systems. So that's where you'll have the native translation model from the native format back and forth to IDQL. And what's important to maybe say here as well is that for the target environments we have integration, we are connecting to a public API that's available for managing users or managing configuration or managing policy directly. So we're not waiting for the target systems, the cloud platforms to support IDQL. We can bring the standard to them with the use of the HEXA integrations and connecting with their public APIs. So we don't have as long of a latency period of getting cloud or getting adoption as we did back in the days of things like SAML, security assertions markup language. Okay, so how have we built integrations so far? Well, up until this time, we've come up with 3 different ways to do the mapping between IDQL and a target system. So the first one could be one of those API calls that I just mentioned. So we can use an API that's available to do a get or a set of roles and groups to map that to the IDQL policy and back and forth. The second way we can integrate is to actually translate the language. So translate from IDQL into things like Google's Bind, or also known as Common Expression Language, and the new Amazon Cedar policy language. So we'll see in one of the demos, our integration with Cedar. And then a third way we've found that can be an interesting way to integrate is to have IDQL directly interpreted by a runtime system. And that is the case with Open Policy Agent and their Rego format. So that's also what we'll see in the demo. So speaking of demos, a lot of exciting things to show you today. We're maybe a little bit light on the PowerPoint, and we'll show you more of what's happening with the software itself. First, I'll give you a bit of a guided tour of the HEXA project site, as well as the GitHub repo and things like that. And then we'll go into a few demos. So the first one will show integration with GCP, the Google Cloud Platform. So we have a demo app running there called Canary Bank, and you'll see me log into it. We'll also then go to the HEXA policy admin UI and connect to that environment, discover the policies. We'll make a change to that because it'll be in IDQL format. And then we'll push that change back out to GCP, and you'll see how the demo app Canary Bank reacts to that change. The second demo is the one for Open Policy Agent that I just mentioned. So we'll connect to an OPA-based environment. We have a different application running there. It's called HEXA Industries. Super simple application, but it uses Open Policy Agent to enforce access to different navigation screens on its very simple UI. So we're going to connect to that policy. We're going to make changes to it in IDQL, and then we'll push that back out to the OPA server, and you will see how the application function changes there. And then finally, I'm very excited to show you this demo. So you may recall that Amazon announced a new product called Amazon Verified Permissions back in December at their conference. And along with that, a new policy format called CEDAR. So in this case, we're going to do that direct language translation. We're going to show you some IDQL policy. We're going to run that through a CLI program which will map it to the CEDAR language. We'll do a copy and paste into the CEDAR playground environment, do some testing there, show you how it works. We'll make a change to that policy, and then actually convert that back to IDQL using, again, this HEXA mapper. So excited to show you those things. And let me just switch screens here. And great. Now we're back to first that tour of the project website. So here I'm on CNCF's website where they list their sandbox projects. And if you scroll down to about to the middle, you'll see the HEXA project here. And also you can go from there to the project website, which tells you all about IDQL and HEXA and some of the great things you can do. And at the bottom, if you're so inclined, you can sign up to be part of this working group, which I hope you will consider. In addition, there's a link here to the GitHub repository. So first, we have Policy Orchestrator. So this repo is for HEXA. And over here, we have Policy. This is the repo for the IDQL spec and definition itself. Now, a couple of things to point out here. One is you can download the OPA-based demo that I'm going to show you. And if you look in the README file, you'll see the instructions for how to set that up. Super simple and fast to set that up yourself, and you can have your own running HEXA demo environment. The other thing I'll point out here on the projects tab, you can actually keep track of what we're working on. We use this pivotal tracker-like screen to organize our development. You can see what's in progress here. You can see in this column, there's a few things for me to review and accept. And then once I do that, we pull them over to the done column. So if you like, you can just watch and follow this project here and see what we're up to and what we're working on. All right, so let's go to the first demo then. And just to refresh you, so this is a a demo application, Canary Bank, running on Google Cloud Platform. You can see I'm already logged in, jerry@strata.io. And here we use the HR part of the portal to show how the bank is operating in 3 different regions, the US, UK, and EU. So you can see at the moment I have access to all 3 regions. But what I'll do now is I will connect to that environment using the HEXA policy admin UI here. And the way we do that is we select what platform we're connecting to, and we give it a key file so it knows what project to connect to. You know, the format for them is down here below. And when I hit install, voila, I have now this Canary Bank project listed. And then I go to applications, and I can see 3 different resources that correspond to those 3 different regions. Now, if I click and I can get more detail on this particular policy. Up at the top here, we give you a display window just to simplify the format. But down below, you can see the actual IDQL and JSON. Now, remember, this was translated from the GCP format into IDQL. So what I can do here is I can make a change. We give you a simple editor to do that. So I'm going to take out the strata.io domain and remove my access. So you can see we only have initial capacity in there now. So what's happened behind the scenes is the HEXA software has taken this updated IDQL, translated it back into the GCP format. This application resides behind the identity aware proxy. So that's where we're setting the policy. And it does take a few moments for that to propagate over to GCP. But if we test it out here, eventually I will no longer have access to the UK region. But like I said, that could take a moment or two. And this is where we say, please demo daemons, be kind to us today. While we're waiting for that to propagate, maybe I'll just mention a couple other things here. When we look at the 3 different resources that are listed, you might notice some differences here. So 2 of them are actually deployed within a Kubernetes cluster, and the first one is deployed using App Engine. So even though we're on a single cloud platform, we're actually working with multiple infrastructure types underneath. So let's go back to the UK region. Voila, we no longer have access to that region. So again, I made a change to a GCP policy using the IDQL format and the HEXA software. Great. Let's go to our second demo. And what we'll do is we'll remove the Google information just for now to keep things clean. And so the second demo is where we're going to connect now to an OPA-based application. So again, we select the integration file. And again, the format, different options are down here below, and hit install. And now again, we show that we're connected to an OPA-based system. We'll go to the applications panel and look at the detail. And here we have more lines. So we have 4 different lines that are aligned with different parts of this demo application. So we'll show you that here quickly. So this is HEXA Industries. It uses Open Policy Agent to determine access to these tabs here on the left navigation panel. So everyone gets access to the welcome screen or dashboard. For the sales tab, I have access. That makes sense since I am logged in as part of the sales group. Click on accounting. I have access there as well. Maybe that's not correct since I'm in sales, so we can change that to deny access, and HR, I don't have access to that nav panel. Okay, great. So let's go back to the HEXA admin, And we can see, sure enough, here's the sales group in the accounting resource. And down here, as before, we have the matching IDQL. So let's use our editor to fix this. So here's the accounting resource. And in this case, we will remove the sales group. Save that. And remember, with OPA, the OPA server is directly interpreting the IDQL. And we do that by writing a bit of Rego code that interprets the IDQL as JSON input. So when we go back to the application, we've got the OPA server polling for new policies very frequently. So we look at the dashboard. Great, still have access there. Sales tab, same thing. Accounting tab, now we don't have access. Excellent, we've fixed that issue. All right, how about the third demo? So in this case, we're going to be using the Cedar Playground. This is where, something that Amazon has made available, so we can do some testing. And what I'm going to do is switch over to this screen here, which is the command line interface program that I mentioned before, HEXA Mapper. It's not yet made its way into the admin UI, but it will be in there at some point. So here, what we start with is a sample IDQL policy. And in this case, we're doing a slight twist on the photo sharing application that's in the Cedar Playground. So in this case, we're saying that members of the Vacation Photo Judge group can view photos in Alice's vacation album. All right, so what the first thing we will do now is convert this IDQL policy to a Cedar policy. And we do that by using this command, HEXA Mapper. The target is AWS Cedar, and we're using as input that file that I just displayed. Okay, fantastic. So here is the Cedar policy. I've just copied that, and I will paste it here on the playground. And the first thing you notice is that it does check for syntax. For example, if I remove that semicolon, it gives me a warning. Okay, so now, and then in the second window down below here are all of the data that I will need for this policy to function. So I have users like Alice and Bob and Giuseppe, and I have certain assets like the vacation photo and who is the owner and where it's located in Alice's vacation album. Excuse me. So now I can do tests like, well, can Bob view this vacation.jpg? And if we look at Bob's information, here he is, he's part of marketing, but he also is in the Vacation Photo Judges group. So if I click evaluate, I should get a permit. Voila, I do. Perfect. What about Jerry? If I put in my own name, denied, because I'm not in the group. I'm not even in the system. Okay, I want to make a change now. I want Giuseppe to take a look at these photos too, because we're doing a judgment. And he is part of the AVT team. And since he's part of audiovisual, maybe he has some expertise to add to this. So what we will do is update the policy so that we can add people in the AV team, allow them access to this as well. So I'll try my own ID again. I still don't have access. That's fine. That's the way it should be. What about Giuseppe? Great. He now has access. Let's just double check that Bob also still works. that we didn't break that. Great, he still has access. Okay, so we've made a change. We've added a second policy. So let's copy all of this. And we go back to our terminal window. And I've already copied this into another file here. So let's convert it back to IDQL. So here, the -p is to parse it back into IDQL, and the input is this changed CDIRT file. All right, so we've changed it back to IDQL. So here's the first policy that's still there. So vacation photo judges can view everything in this album, but now also the AVT team can view the same information. Perfect. The demos all worked okay. Let's go back to our slides and we'll wrap up from there. All right, so hopefully you've enjoyed the information so far and the demos that I showed you. What I wanted to then summarize by just mentioning some of the the benefits of using policy orchestration with HEXA and with the IDQL format. So we're able to connect to these targeted systems just by public APIs. So it's easy to build these integrations. You can now work with a universal policy format. I don't know how to write Rego code. I don't know how to write GCP policies, but I can use IDQL and HEXA to operate in a policy as code model. You can make this part of your CI/CD pipelines and ultimately break some of that vendor lock-in, because now I can more easily move workloads from one environment to another. So hopefully you have some interest maybe in joining and supporting the group. We have many different kinds of members, some that are very active and writing code or reviewing code, contributing use cases, but we have others that are just supporting the project. So hopefully you're inspired to do that, and you can go over to hexaorchestration.org and sign up there. You can also send me an email, jerry@strata.io, and I'd be happy to share more information with you. Thank you so much for joining. Hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye for now.